Yeah, so I want to ask you a question. Have you ever in your life, find yourself in a situation so out of this world that all you can do is like marvel over the question of, wow, how did I get myself into this mess? What have I got myself into? But the more important question would be, how am I going to get myself out? See, I can remember as if it was yesterday. It was a gloomy day outside. There was like a hesitance in the air, where it was one of those type of eerie feelings, where it just it just sends signals through my body and was telling me that something's about to happen. It's like that song that says, I could feel it. I could feel it in the air. There's a song where it says that, and basically, what's going on is that you can just feel something is about to go down. That's not going to be pleasant. But I can remember as if it was yesterday. I was sitting up in that courtroom. I was about to officiate a contract between the New York Department of Corrections. I was about to officiate a contract with them to give them the next 20 years of my life. I know a lot of you may be wondering, 20 years, that's a long time. What did he do? You know, the question ain't, it's not what did I do? I think it's more or less of what has been done to me. You know, I'm going to share with you three contributing factors that led me to the path of my incarceration. Adverse childhood experiences, drugs, and gangs. And also I suffered, you know, um, a life of identity crisis. Because at one point my life spiraled downward uncontrollably. I had just basically, given up at one point. I'd embraced the concept of, I was just going to be a product of my environment and nothing more, just a low life. You see, as a child, I suffered verbal, physical, and psychological abuse from my father. But he too, he had his own demons he was suffering with too. And his biggest downfall was his alcohol abuse. He spent most of his time out hanging out with his friends at bars, and whenever he was home, he would just cause havoc to the house. He would just come in and just taking out his misery on the family, whether it be verbally or physically. And I never understood that because we were the ones that was closest to him, but he would always take out his anger and frustration on us, his family. You know, I can remember I can remember a time or two, or plenty of times. My sister and I, we would be laying in our bed sleeping, and out of the blue, we would hear a jingling in the key, in the doorknob, which is the key. Someone trying to fumble and trying to put the key in the hole to open the door, and that sound became so familiar to us that we knew it was my drunken father trying to get in the house, but he was too drunk to find his way in. You know, my sister and I would look at each other, and for me personally, I felt very bad for my mother because I knew that this would be a night where she was going to get beat up again. For some reason, my mother always got the bad end of the stick. My dad would come inside the house screaming, yelling, throwing things around, you know, grabbing on my mother, just throwing her around everywhere like a rag doll, just throwing her around the place. You know, you just beat her senseless most of the times, and my mother was, she was the glue to the family. She was the one that, always tried her best to keep love, peace, and happiness within the walls of our house. She made sure the house was clean. She made sure that our homework was done, and she just made sure that the little elements of family you know was lived in the house, although we were going through the circumstances of my father always being abusive to us. You know, she did everything that she could have done to keep the family together, but my father would do everything that he could do to tear it all apart. And he would just make all of us feel like, like we were just worthless, like we're nothing. He was always, speaking down of us, degrading us, and for me personally, that made me become very like disassociated with my feelings, disassociated with my emotions for him. Everything I did, I began to doubt myself because my father instilled this sense of I was not good enough inside of me. This type of repeated trauma, it did nothing but confuse me. My heart just grew cold, callous. I was defeated. I was defeated. It all became too much for me to handle. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine like just going through that at a young age as a child, trying to find his way? I mean, like, how would that really make you feel? How would that make you feel? You know, um, I found myself on many occasions at night on my knees, or bent over my bed, just crying, asking God, why me? Why? Like, what did I do? What did I do to get in this situation? Why my family? Why me? Why I have to go through this? Why I have to witness this? Why me? And things weren't just getting, nothing would ever change. Nothing would ever change for me, I just felt like God put me here on this earth just to torture. It was like I was living just to die, And eventually, you know, um, I found myself at a point to where I became suicidal. Yeah, I became suicidal. I just wanted to, I just wanted a way out. I was just searching for a way out. So I began to self-medicate. And down this path of self-medication, I went from drug to drug to drug to drug, trying to fill this emptiness, this void within me. I was just trying to find something to fulfill that, but nothing ever, I never found anything that could fill that void. And then along this journey, I grew some addictions, like how am I gonna, get money to pay for these addictions that I've indulged in? How am I gonna do this? And that's what led me to joining my there was a neighborhood gang, that I had some affiliates with, but I got acquainted with them, and through the life of selling drugs and robbing and stuff like that, I was able to afford money to buy, to purchase my drugs. In this new gang life that I was living in, it was a sense of like I felt like I belonged there. Like I felt like my homies, my big homies, which was guys older than me, they were giving me love and they showed me how to, I was getting this fulfillment that I wasn't getting at home from my father. So I was loving this life. I was loving being with them. I loved being around them. I snuck out at night just to hang with them, and it was like we was living a life of above, just being above the law. We created our own laws. There was no rules, and it was like a high life for me. It was very exciting for me. I had I was getting money, I was, exploring with different drugs. I was just doing me. Basically, I was doing me. So I dropped out of school. I moved out of my house because it was like the more I stayed home, the more I would need more drugs to forget the experience that I would get when I returned home to my house to hear my father, all of my, I had to use more drugs just to erase that, so yeah, so that street life really got me into a place where, I was just doing me, committing robberies after robberies, just living that life, but I wish someone would have told me, you know, then I wish someone would have told me the price that I had to pay for living that type of lifestyle. I wish someone would have told me that there were going to be consequences that I would have to pay at the end of this road. but there wasn't. Everything was all good until it wasn't. And that explains why I had to officiate a contract with the Department of Corrections to sign the next 20 years of my life over to them, because I got caught up in a string of robberies that I was doing, and that life came to an end. So therefore I was incarcerated, you know. But what I can say about my incarceration was that it saved my life. My incarceration saved my life because I know what I was getting into out there in the streets. And had I not gone to prison, I would have been dead. I wouldn't be here right now sharing my story with you. I would have been dead because I was really doing some foul stuff to people, to myself, and just, just being real careless about my life. It was in prison, I had enough time to sit with myself, to find myself. You know, I took what was intended to be a punishment and I turned it into endless opportunities for me to create a self-rewarding future with my life. You know, I'll never forget, it was this one visit I had with my mother. You know, she came, sat in front of me, we were sitting in the visit, and the vibe was just off. We wasn't vibing, it was just off. But I couldn't help but notice the wrinkles around my mother's eyes, that she was getting older. And as I'm looking at her in her eye, I'm seeing all the pain, the torture, the suffering, all of this that I inflicted upon her. I'm feeling it. And I'm feeling real embarrassed right now because I did this to my mother. And the one thing I feared the most while I was incarcerated was having my mother die. Having my mother die, and I wasn't able to go to her funeral. So with that pain and suffering and agony that I felt from my mother's eyes, it did something to me. It did something inside of me. I grew onto a conviction that I had to change my life. I couldn't continue to cause this pain and suffering to my mother or my kids anymore. So it was then that I embraced the power of choice. I chose to get myself straight. I chose to go to rehabilitation programs. I chose to educate myself. I chose not to go to the yard, not to go to the gym. I chose to go to the library to educate myself. I chose to learn about my addictions and learn about my mental illnesses. I chose to get invested within myself so that I can become an asset to my family and my community upon my release. I chose to reinvent myself so that I can have something to show to my family that the pain and suffering wasn't in vain. I chose to do these things because I found my worth, and I was worth it. They was worth it. So it's from that moment that my life changed. And I really can say that I began to appreciate myself. I began to love myself. I was feeling alive inside. It's like all these years I was trying to find this thing outside of me when it was within me the whole time, and that was love. But I couldn't have found that love if there was no forgiveness. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive my father. In order for me to move on in my life, I had to make these forgivenesses. And it was only then that I was able to move forward. Yeah, I chose to use the power of choice to live a better life. And I came to know that no matter how much drugs, no matter how much of the criminal lifestyle, no matter how much of those things in life that don't matter, no matter how much of all of this I indulge myself into, it was only me that could have made a difference, that could make myself happy. It was love, it was forgiveness that I found only through forgiving myself, loving myself, finding my worth, and most importantly, finding God. So what I'm saying to you all is that, and I know we all human, there had been a time too where you found yourself in a position to where all you can do is think of, how did I get myself into this situation? And how am I going to get out? And I know there's been a time or two where you had to ask yourself that. But what I'm saying to you is that please do not look down on incarcerated or formerly incarcerated individuals. Please do not look down on us unless you're looking down to give us a hand up. We need your support. We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. Please let today be the first day of your new beginning of spreading the love and flipping your script. Thank you.